Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to safetystudygroup.com, Safety Study Group's YouTube channel, and durusdaniyatna.com and durusdaniyatna's YouTube channel. Today we'll be talking about permit to work, what it is by definition, what does it cover, what kind of jobs require a permit, what are the different sections of permits, and what types of different permits we have. Why do we need different types of permits, and other points that have to be met within the permit to work system itself to make sure that it is effective, and why do we need all these parts. Hopefully we'll be able to cover all of these points in this video. This video will be available in English as you're watching now, and in Arabic as well. So by definition, what is a permit to work? According to the Health and Safety Executive in the United Kingdom, HSE, the permit to work is a documented procedure that authorizes certain people to carry out specific work within a specified time frame. Now, let's examine these words. It says that it's a documented procedure, so this means it's a hard paper. You need to have a hard paper with signatures, and all the requirements must be met, which authorizes certain people. So it's not everybody freely, willy-nilly coming in and they'll be covered in the permit. No, certain people, the people that have signed on the permit itself to carry out a specific task and within a specified time frame. So I think these words are self-explanatory. Without wasting any more time, let's go to the next point. Now, many jobs require different permits, but what are these jobs? Now, the jobs are different from company to company to company. Okay, some people say even if you breathe, you need to have a permit. You know, I mean, not exactly, but they say if you want to change a light bulb, you need a permit. If you want to do this, you need a permit. Does that mean they have a good health and safety management system? No. Does it mean that you have a good one? Also no. Does it mean they have a bad one? Nobody knows. Now, excuse me. The people that say you need a permit for breathing or for changing a light bulb, maybe because they were involved in so many accidents, now they're trying to cover themselves by enforcing this rule on everybody that they need a permit for everything. Now, the permit is not something that controls people. If you come to it, it's just a piece of paper, really. If the system is not enforced correctly, what is a permit? It's just a piece of paper, and that's it. If accidents want to happen, they will happen. Why? Because there is lack of awareness, lack of training, a lack of understanding of tasks, hazards, and risk management. So you can ask me to have a permit, but if you haven't trained me, all that means is you'll be delaying me for 5 minutes to open the permit, and that's it. So some types of jobs that require permit, like for real, they need a permit. For example, you have confined space entry. Now, confined space is one of the hazardous tasks which require permit to work. Why? Because inside the confined space, there are some hazards. Maybe they are different than the ones outside. The most important thing to be mentioned in confined spaces is lack of oxygen and the presence of hazardous atmosphere. Now, you would never have this this hazard if you're working in an outside environment, but within confined space, you will most likely have lack of oxygen or the presence of poisonous gases like H2S or other gases. So there are specific requirements that have to be met before you can work inside a confined space. One of these requirements is the permit to work for confined space. But what do we have to have before we go into the confined space. Like we said, you need to have a permit, you need to have a risk assessment, you need to have a JSA, uh, okay, a JSA or a risk assessment. Okay, sometimes you need both, sometimes you need only one. So either or. And like I said, a permit, JSA, a risk assessment, a rescue plan, a trained rescue team. Like I said, all these things are only papers if you don't have people that understand what they're doing. So you need all these papers, a rescue plan, a team of rescuers. You need a rescue tripod or a retrieval device to make sure that you retrieve any injured people um, if you happen to have an injury inside the confined space. So without meeting all these requirements, excuse me, again, the permit is just a piece of paper. It will not cover anything. Yes, it's a legal document, all of that, but if you are not enforcing it correctly, you you're not meeting the legal requirements. One of these requirements is providing training to your people so that they understand what the permit to work is. Now, we need this permit to make sure that all hazards have been identified in the confined space. Okay, what kind of hazards can we have inside a confined space? Well, you can have a lot. Like I said, lack of oxygen is one. Presence of poisonous gases, two. Um, Flammable or explosive environment, that's three. Um, Slippery, dark, wet. Let's say you have inside you have many pipes. You have sharp objects, for example. There is a chance of somebody pushing a button somewhere else, and you end up flushing this confined space if it was a tank or a vessel, or if it's a cement or a silo tank or something. You can bury these people alive, you know. Or if you're working in a construction confined space, maybe somebody will come and cement this area. Like I said, the list goes on and on and on and on if you haven't taken the proper precautions. So you need to have this permit, and you need to regularly monitor this environment to make sure that it is suitable for um, for work. If it's not, you need to stop the work immediately or don't start it at all, and then make the proper let's say precautions ready before you go inside or send your people inside. Now, hot work is another task which requires a permit to work. Welding, grinding, torch cutting, anything. So basically, anything that generates a spark. In oil and gas rigs or in oil and gas facilities, if you are using any equipment that generates a spark, even a cell phone, even a hammer, you need to have a permit. Why? Because you will be generating a spark. Now, if I am going to use this and it will generate a spark, what's the difference between having a permit or not having a permit? Okay. If your work generating spark will take place in a time that is not okay, the permit will not be issued to you. Why? They will say this task uh, goes against what is happening now. So we cannot open the permit for you now. Once this job is done, you can come back where the spark does not pose, a threat or a risk to other operations. Same goes for hot work, like I said, in welding, cutting, grinding, whatever. Okay, working on electrical equipment or live circuits or high voltage lines. Of course, you need to have a permit for that to make sure the proper isolations are in place so nobody gets hurt while doing their job. Working at height is another thing. Working at height is a task that is extremely dangerous, and it requires the permit, risk assessment, JSA, either or, and you need to have uh, people that are trained, like within the training metrics. You need to know that these people have been trained and they can work at height. Now, excuse me, what does each of them involve? Like, for example, you need for hard work, like I said, rescue team, retrieval system, and all of that. For hot work, you need to know that the environment is ready for hot work. For fall, for working at height, you need to know what their fall prevention is. The fall prevention plan is, or if they have, the proper plan. Okay, the proper plan to make sure that the fall first is prevented. But if it's not prevented, how will you reduce it? Okay, if it's not reduced, how will you mitigate it? Blah blah blah, all these points. So each of these require its own permit form. It's really funny because you have some companies that they have one permit. Okay, on the top it says what type of permit is this. It says here cold, hot, electrical, I don't know, confined space, whatever, working at height. You just have to tick a box that says, okay, this is it. Or you have an excavation permit, or no, you cannot have one form that covers all. You need to have one permit for each for each task. Why? Because the hazards on working inside, on working at height are so different than the hazards you would have in a confined space. Or excavation is different than hot work. Each of them needs to have a list of hazards which will be identified before the permit is issued. Now we'll be talking about the issue authority or issuing authority or authorization authority in a minute, but let's move on. Now there are some equipment that need to be maintained, and this maintenance work will require a permit. Now, why does somebody need a permit if they're maintaining equipment? Well, one of the reasons is to ensure that you have stopped unexpected startups. Okay. Now, you need to have lockout, tagout in place, isolation in place, electrical isolation, or basically cutting off the source of energy to prevent this equipment from being started once you're working on it. I was actually on a site. If the person that was with me on that site watches this, he will know what I'm talking about. They were cleaning. Okay, I'm not going to say details. They were cleaning a piece of equipment, and that equipment had a piston. Now, when they worked, one person had his foot in a place, and the piston ended up, penetrating his foot, which was very, very bad. Luckily, he wasn't hurt, too bad, because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a full energy. It was just residual energy. Okay, so just because you've done your lockout and tagout, and you've unplugged it from the source, it doesn't mean there is no residual energy. Once you've done that, you need to start it again to make sure that it doesn't work. After that, you can lock it or tag it out. Okay, so the types of work that require a permit to work, like we said, hot work, working on electrical lines or high voltage lines or live electrical circuits, working at height, special maintenance work, and of course confined space entry. So permit to work is not just a piece of paper or a permission to carry out dangerous tasks. Okay, like I said, if the permit is issued to anybody just like that, freely, willy-nilly, if it's issued just like that, it is just a piece of paper. You will not benefit anything from it. Yeah, some say that, yeah, we will cover ourselves. No, you will not be covering yourself. Okay, but let's talk about the actual document and what it says. So a permit to work is not simply a permission to carry out dangerous jobs or tasks. It is an essential part of a system which determines how the job can be carried out safely and helps communicate this to those doing the job. Okay, so let's say I went to open the permit, the guys issued it to me, it's ready now. That's it? No, we need to hold a pre-job safety meeting, ensure that the people understand the tasks, and they have all viewed the method statement, which is also required and must be reviewed within, not within, sorry, with the team that is going to perform the task. Now, a pre-job safety meeting is very, very important because in that job, maybe the roles will differ. So you need to assign roles in the pre-job safety meeting, in the toolbox talk, in the whatever you call it. You need to assign roles to certain people. Okay, you're a rescuer, you're a fire watch, you're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. People need to understand what they are doing, and they need to have had training before they do this job. So, like we said, the permit to work is is a documented procedure or documented piece of paper which authorizes certain people to do certain tasks within a certain time frame, and they have to have identified exactly the location of work. And of course, this task is high risk. That is why it needs a permit. Now, it also identifies the precautions required to complete the work safely based on risk assessment. Okay, so the permit to work is a part of a system. It needs to identify the hazards clearly and communicate them to the workers, and these hazards will have been identified or would have been identified by a risk assessment or a JSA. Now, the permit to work is also used to describe what work will be done and how it will be done. Now, how will the simple worker understand that? They will understand that through the method statement. Okay. Now, the workers don't actually need to read the method statement, but they need to understand the method statement. They need to know what the job is and how it will be done. Okay. Now, moving on, there are many sections in the permit to work, and one of which is the authorization. The authorization of the permit to work basically is the people in management of that site. These are the issuing authority or authorization authority. These are the ones that issue the permit to the people performing the job or performing authority. Okay. Now, the permit to work requires declaration, like we're reading now, from the people authorizing the work, the issuing authority, and carrying out the work, the performing authority. Where necessary, it also requires declarations from those involved in shift handover procedure or extension to the work. So basically, what does that mean? It means that there are people that issue the permit. there are people that they perform the work for the mentioned in the permit, and if the job is not completed, they need to extend it, hand it over to the next shift. Okay, if the work or the work site is 24/7, so they hand it to the night shift and the day shift. And each permit is different than the other. Finally, before equipment or machinery is put back into service, it will require a declaration from the permit originator that it is ready for normal use. So clearly, this is an example of maintenance. So let's say you're working on a generator. Before you hand over the permit or cancel the permit or return the permit, you need to make sure that the generator actually is working and it's ready to be used normally. Now, what does the permit to work or PTW need to have to be a valid permit? Now, there are some information that should be covered inside the permit or within the permit, and they have to be clearly communicated from the issuing authority to the performing authority. Okay, now we will talk about a few points now, and if this video carries out to be a long video, I'm going to break it into two parts, just so it's not too boring. Now, the permit to work should ensure proper authorization of designated high risk work. Okay, basically it means who is the highest person that is required to be signing the permit. this person must sign it. Any person below them cannot sign. For example, if the site superintendent or the company man or the site manager is required to sign it, their deputy cannot sign it unless there is a clear procedure says that yes, this person can sign it. Okay, so we need to have the right person signing the permit. The permit to work also should clearly identify the location and nature of work to be done. What does that mean? It means, for example, if I'm applying for a permit with the city, and this is common, if I'm applying for the permit with the city to work at intersection 1 and 4, just an example, I cannot go to work at intersection 5 and 9. Why? Because mine is 1 and 4. This is where the government has been notified, and they gave me a time frame to work here now until a specified time, and that's it. Same on the work side. If you're authorized to work on a generator in section A, you cannot go to work on a refrigerator inside a kitchen in section C. Okay, so the job is clearly named, its location is named, and the nature of the work is also identified. The permit to work also should clearly define any limits on the work to be done, including time limits. Now, this is different or difficult because where I worked in one site before, the permit is not for 12 hours, or it's not for 8 hours, it's for one shift. Now, what is the difference? The shift is 12 hours, or the shift is 8 hours. So why is it different between 12 hours or one shift? Okay. Let's say the shift starts at 7 and it ends at 7. Okay? Okay. After 7, the other shift starts until 7. Okay? Okay? If a team started a task at 5 o'clock, it means their permit is good for the rest of the shift. Okay, so from 5 to 7, that's when they can use the permit, only for 2 hours. If the other shift comes, they can hand over this permit to them, or they can open a new permit. And mostly they just opened a new permit. Okay, the other permit, once it's open, it's good until 7 o'clock the next morning, or in the evening, or until the job is done. Once the job is done, that's it. They come in, they cancel the permit, and that's it. By the way, canceling the permit and closing the permit mean the same thing in this scenario. Now, what is the difference between 12 hours and one shift? Like I said, if you have a third-party company working on your premises, they came and they worked with this shift. Now, this shift is leaving, but the same crew from the third party is staying. Now, they are required to open a new permit and discuss it with the arriving team, with the arriving shift, so everybody knows what's going on. Okay, so that's why the time frame must be identified clearly inside the permit. The permit to work also should clearly identify the hazards associated with the work and the necessary precautions, including safe isolation of power or any energy source. We covered that when we were talking about maintenance, basically lockout, tagout, or removing a part of the machine. So make sure that unexpected startups don't happen. Also, the permit to work should be prominently displayed at the workstation, or there should be a station permit, or the person can have the permit on themselves, or there is a cabin or a place. This is the performing authority. They must have the permit near. Okay, they must also have a permit inside the HSE office. They must have a copy at the site manager office, and the client's representative's office, and the site manager office. We're talking if your company is working for another company, or another company is working for you while you work for another company. Why is this important? Because sometimes there is an HSE compliance officer from the client section, or let's say the big company that comes and inspects the workstation. If you have a construction work site, it can be a chaotic situation. You may have 50 permits open at the same time. Okay, as an HSE compliance officer, I need to go and say, excuse me, where's the shift supervisor? Where's this work supervisor? Yes, I'm here. May I please see your permit? Okay, I see the permit and discuss it and make sure it's good. If they don't have a permit, that is a different situation. Stop the work immediately and notify the right people, and things will escalate from there. Okay. The permit to work also should ensure that the manager responsible for the area in which the work is aware of the work being done. Okay, what is this sentence? Okay, let's say you are the site manager where I am coming to perform my tasks. Okay, now you have 7 tasks happening at the same time. Let's say confined space, excavation, you have drilling, you have grouting, you have uh, welding, you have working at height, everything. You have a lot of things, and you're the site manager, and I am a third party. I've just come here and I've begun working without going to get an induction from the HAC office, like talking to the site manager, because you may have different managers of different sections in the project. So if the manager doesn't know what's happening, maybe he will plan something to be done in the same location where I'm working, and these two operations can you know there may be a conflict between my operation and theirs. So that is why you need to have good communication between your team and the manager, and maybe they can assist you if there's an emergency, God forbid, or something. This way, maybe they can make special treatment for you. Send an ambulance, send the medic, or bring the additional people. So the manager of that area must be aware of what you're doing, when you're doing it, and how long are you expected to be doing this task on his ground, because yes, this is his ground. Now, the permit to work also should ensure that any person responsible for a particular plant or installation to be worked on is made aware. For example, let's say I'm the site medic and I've done my morning inspection on the ambulance. Everything is ready. I've checked everything. Everything's good. Now my place is inside the clinic. If they need me, they will come get me. And let's say you and your team, excuse me, you've come to the site and you have a routine inspection. You're from the main company head office. You've come to do inspections and maintenance, whatever. And you've taken apart my ambulance. You've done horrible things without telling me, without notifying me. This is a mistake. You need to tell me. Maybe there is something, and maybe the job requirements or the operation stage at this moment doesn't allow your job to happen. So maybe I'll send you back to the office and come back after a few days, or maybe after 7 hours. Okay, so you need to let the proper people know that, hey, you know what, I'm going to be working on your generator. Is that okay? Yeah, absolutely. We have a spare. Hey, we will be doing maintenance on your forklift. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. We only have one forklift and we have a lot of work. What you're wanting to do now is very, very simple. Okay, maybe it's let's say proper inspection and all that. Okay, the inspection, we did it last week. It's good. We do the daily check. It's good. Okay, the forklift is not in a critical condition. Maybe you want to check the lights, seats, and all of that. These things are good. We've checked them, but we can do it after 5 hours maybe. Okay, so always make sure the person running or responsible for that plant is aware of what you're doing. You must also provide a record to show that required procedures to control hazards and risks are continuous. Okay, what does that mean? It means if you're working inside a confined space, the permit to work must have, the certificates of isolation, certificates of lockout, tagout. You need to actually have keys to the locks. You need to have the keys to the big part that you've installed to prevent unexpected startups. So you need to have proof to show that the control measures are still in place and the the work environment does not pose a risk on workers or people in general. Also, to make sure that uh, when plant has been worked on, is handed back in a safe way and is ready to be used again safely. Okay, now there are a few more information that need to be addressed. This is the last thing I'll mention in this part of the video, and the second part of the video will be covering the remaining parts which I haven't spoken about until now. Before introducing a permit to work system, it is very, very important that all affected employees, all workers, all responsible parties, they know when to receive, training. They need to have been trained and they know what the permit requires, because I assure you, it has happened countless times. People, they have a permit, they have the signatures, but they don't know what this is. So you need to have proper training, and you need to make sure that all the documents are in order. You need to have collected all the signatures. This way you're covering yourself and the company when there is an audit by the client or by the government or by the enforcement agency or by a senior person from high management. You need to make sure that everything is ready, all the signatures are in place, and this will help the monitoring process of the permit to work system and the health and safety management system, because the whole health and safety management system is about plan, do, check, act. Now, the check section is the one that talks about monitoring and auditing to make sure that the permit is running smoothly. But in the audit and the monitoring, most likely they will identify weaknesses and implement corrective action to hopefully prevent this from happening again in the upcoming quarter or half year or next year even. So this will be it. I'll see you in part 2.